Good evening. My name is Matt Shanky, Village Administrator for the Village of McFarland. Thank you for coming here tonight. Tonight's a presentation by our consultants on Aquatics Feasibility Study we've been working on since last year. This is a project that was meant to kind of look at our options that we have in the village, outdoors, and what might be available to our community that we haven't otherwise considered. It's not a project that's meant to displace or otherwise replace anything or anyone. It's more just kind of looking at our village and seeing what other options might we want to consider in the future as they relate to water resources, aquatics, and nature. To that end, we've hired some consultants to help us kind of get our arms around those questions or questions that come up and help us provide answers. And looking at some of the issues surrounding these types of facilities, their costs, operations, other challenges that other communities encounter, as if we are to consider something in the future, was meant to kind of help in that respect. This isn't a project where we're looking to make a commitment or otherwise define or identify a specific improvement to move forward. It's not a master plan or a design process. Those are the types of things where you kind of generally have an idea of what you want to do and you really hone in on it to work on that detail. This is more just looking at the general feasibility and what our options are from a very high level as it affects our community, so that hopefully if we see something, elements of this project and plan that we like, we might start to move them forward and move into more detailed discussions about that. But this is really meant to just start to collectively discuss sort of what other options might be available to us, opportunities within the community. Just as a matter of procedure, this meeting's being taped. It's for people to watch at home that weren't otherwise able to make it tonight or later. If you want to go back and watch it later too, you could. That'll be available to you. But doing so, we ask you to speak into the microphone when we have a question and answer session. That's part of this, and so we can record or hear what that has to say. All the materials that we have tonight, and you'll see, will be on our website tomorrow to look at. We also have an online comment form that will be available. So if you weren't ready or unable to make comments tonight, that'll be available to you, that you can submit additional comments to through that process that will release tomorrow. Other than that, we hope you enjoy what we've put together tonight and offer some good feedback. And with that, I'll turn it over to Blake.
So guys, I am a walker, so if I start wandering away from the podium, tell me to get back, because I know I have to be in front of the mic here tonight. My name is Blake Tyson. I'm a landscape architect and planner, and my career focus is in the park and rec world. And we have a strong niche in the aquatics industry, which is why we're here helping you guys through this initial process. With me tonight, I have Patrick and Jason, part of our team. And the second part of our evening, we're going to be kind of milling around our boards and exhibits here in the back of the room, and the three of us will be available for discussion and comment. I really want this to be an interactive thing tonight instead of me talking at you for an hour and a half, right? Is that how much time we have? Is my remote going to work? Okay, so real briefly, I just kind of introduced our team. I want to talk a little bit about why we're here and why we're doing this project and what we hope to get out of it. And then we'll show you some of our analysis pieces that everything I'm showing you here on the screen is also going to be on these boards behind you tonight. So I know you won't be able to see it in full detail here on the board, but that's why we have the boards for discussion here later tonight. And then I do want to do a little Q&A if you guys have questions about the process, what we're hoping to accomplish, or what we've found. Again, we can either do it here, but I guess I would prefer to have a more intimate discussion back here by the boards. The other thing I wanted to point out, we do have some comment forms here at the table that Patrick Vanna is going to hold up for you. We have some pens. If you want to write your questions, comments, that is fine. A lot of people don't like to get in front of a mic and go on record. So we have the paper version for you tonight. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is follow some simple directions. I have 2 green stickers per person, and we have some ideas back here. I want to get an impression from you what scale facility you think might fit our community. So as we get back here, you'll have a chance to place your green stickers on the ideas that you like. Can we all do that? All right, perfect. So the first thing we wanted to do was understand what is the potential for an outdoor aquatic facility in the community, right? We know that we have the high school pool that's under reconstruction now. We have some adjacent communities with aquatic facilities that some of our residents can go to. So you'll see one of the first graphics back here is that I'll call it a market analysis. Basically, it's showing you options that our residents have for this type of amenity. And they're all categorized by splash pad, outdoor pool, indoor pool, aquatic center. So we looked at all different types of facilities and how far you might have to travel, either by yourself or with your family, to use those facilities. So it's kind of a mini market analysis, if you will. So from that initial analysis, then we looked at population densities within the community, okay, both current and projected from the comp plan. So we know where the housing centers and employment centers are going to grow over the next 10 to 20 years. And as we start to think about facility distribution, where's the best place? We want to make sure that we're doing that wisely and that it corresponds with where our population centers are going to be. Another piece we looked at was our transportation corridors. Okay, so how do people get from either home, work, or wherever they're coming from to this type of facility, right? And that could be by motor vehicle, it could be by foot, it could be by bicycle. So we looked at all those different things, mapped that out, and again, I have that for you back here. So that was kind of our first task of this process. The second piece is for us to distill that and to take your feedback both here tonight and over the next week or so as the public comment period is open, and then come back to the village with a set of recommendations and options for the future. So as Matt said, this process is not to fully design and develop a new aquatic facility. It's to figure out what the appetite is in the community and what the best scale for a facility might be. So we've identified some potential locations through these analyses that we think could be suitable homes for different facilities. And you'll see not all of the sites that we have found can fit all the different scales of facility that might be an option. Okay, so you'll see the first board back here is the facility analysis. And if you look, we are right here in the middle of these concentric circles. We have a 5 mile as the crow flies and a 10 mile. So all my little colored dots spread out are other facilities owned by either private entities or other communities in Dane County. And you can see there is quite a big gap on this side of the county, which I think was one of the reasons we started this whole study. But this is a nice way to look at where the distribution is, and then over here in our legend, we tell you what types of amenities are at each of those aquatic facilities. So does it have lap lanes, slides, splash pad? It's all outlined here for you. Okay, so this is the demographic analysis from our current state. Okay, so the takeaway here is the darker the squares, the higher the density. So we start to see some patterns here. Where are people, where are the housing clusters, right? In theory, you're not going to want to develop a facility that is on the outskirts of the community that everyone has to travel to by motor vehicle. It would be nice if we had alternate means to get to these facilities, right? Either bike or by foot. So I'm sorry, this slide shows you the projected. So you can see we're growing to the east, right? And over here you'll see the current. Okay, this map shows you the transportation corridors. We mapped out the bike, which is green. Okay, so that accounts for on-road bike lanes. It accounts for off-road bike paths. We have the major arterial roadway corridors mapped. The other thing this graphic does is it starts to show you some points of interest within the community, right? So the retail centers, the schools, civic buildings, other things that people might be moving to and from, okay, as they look to use an aquatic facility. So So we distilled all that information and we came up with 12 options. Now, one of the other driving factors here as we look at these sites is how big of a piece of property we need to actually physically build these different types of facilities. So pretty quick, when we started to look at empty parcels and vacant land around the community, we really only ended up with about 12 options that had any size or suitable slopes and other environmental factors that would allow for development. So we mapped out those 12 sites, and very quickly it became apparent that some of these sites were only suitable for a smaller scale facility, whereas some could accommodate a larger either neighborhood scale or regional scale aquatic center. So those are all color coded, right? The orange, purple, and green. The green would be more of a natural water-based access. So if we wanted to enhance, say, a beach or river access, the green sites might lend themselves to those type of facilities. Whereas the orange sites were suitable for a splash pad scale, okay? And the purple sites were large enough and had terrain suitable if we wanted to do a larger regional scale facility or larger neighborhood scale. Does that make sense so far? All right, good, I haven't lost you. So you'll see one of our graphics back here. I drew a typical representation of those scale of facility, all right? So the four that I want to talk about is a civic splash pad, and I'm sure most of you have seen it somewhere. It's a smaller kind of urban setting. Most of it's all ground plane concrete with ground jets. There aren't vertical features. Oftentimes you'll find them in shopping centers or downtown plazas, okay? The next would be, the next would be a typical splash pad, which usually ranges between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet in size. They would have some vertical features and some ground sprays. Oftentimes they have shade structures and other things that are tied to it. If you've been to Elver Park, there's one at Elver. I'm trying to think of other. Middleton Lakeview Park has one. Those are two good examples. DeForest Conservancy Commons is the third. A neighborhood scale pool, we would need some parking, typically off-street. We'll have a support building for showers, maybe a small concessions, restrooms. And then we have either a lap pool, some sort of small slide structure, maybe it's a dive well. Those are all detail options we work through later. I guess my point is this is roughly the square foot footprint you would need for that type of pool. And along with a pool vessel comes all the dry deck around for chairs, lounging, all the other things that happen in a pool setting. The fourth and largest concept is what I'm terming a regional center, where we would hope that people would drive from Cottage Grove or Monona or throughout Madison. It has enough amenities, larger slides. Maybe it's an 8-lane pool that's suitable to host meets. There are things that would drive me as a resident of Middleton to come across town, with my family and use this type of facility. With that comes a larger building. This is shown quite large if we wanted to add on. Oftentimes a regional facility will have some indoor facilities as well. If we were simply looking at an outdoor pool, you're probably looking at about a third of that building for footprint. But with the larger scale amenity comes a larger footprint of parking. So you can start to see how this type of facility really only fits on a small number of sites within our community. Yes, questions up at the mic, if you will.
Just generally about scale, are those common scale?
Yes. Yeah, so the question is, are these graphics all drawn to the same scale? And yes. So if I were to overlay this one on here, it would be the same 1 inch equals X. So you can see I can get a whole lot of these in that footprint. Good question.
And then acreage, do you have an estimate?
Not on the top of my head, but by the time we get back there, we'll have it for you. Good questions. the question was, do I have a typical acreage for these? And Patrick will bail me out here in a minute. Okay, so knowing that, and knowing we had the 12 potential sites, really it came down to 4 preferred sites with this type of facility. You remember I talked about some of the natural water access in the river, beach, that type of thing. I'm not factoring those in because none of these facilities really fit in those natural settings. So of the 12, we ended up with 4 that were conducive to this type of facility. The first, this is the existing community gardens. There's a large open space here that is scalable for a civic style splash pad. So something small, intimate, more urban in nature. By the way, I do recognize that not all of the 12 sites that we have identified are owned currently by the village. So that is another factor that we need to think about moving forward. I guess our charge was just to find potential options. So that's what we're talking about. This site up here in the upper right is Lewis Park. There's a lot of development currently in that park, and we felt that you could pretty easily get a splash pad of this scale on that site and not disturb any of the current programming or function of that space. Okay? The third site is right next to the church, just up the street here. It's a large open space. It's quite flat, very suitable for this type of development. So you can see this is the approximate footprint of a facility like this, of that scale. So you can see how that would fit. I'm not suggesting that's the location, but just to give you a sense of scale. And then the fourth property we identified is out on the east end of town. That is quite large and could easily accommodate a footprint of this scale, plus athletic fields, large-scale parking, lots of other park amenities if we wanted to create a regional destination. And that fits very well with the projected growth on the eastern side of the community. Questions on those 4 graphics? Hearing none. So tonight, what I want to do is dismiss you and come back here. The 3 of us will be walking around. We can talk to you individually about some of these graphics and what the information that we're finding. I do have the comment cards and I have the stickers. So you will see if you turn around real quick, Patrick is back there. He's now flipped over those same 4 boards. I'm going to give you sets of 2 green stickers, all right? I want you to use one sticker to indicate which scale facility you think might be appropriate. So that board on the far left, right? Remember the 4 scales I showed you? So what of those 4 scales, after you look at all this data, makes sense to you? What does your gut tell you the community might want? And then the second green sticker, if you look at the 4 sites that we've identified, if any of those make sense to you, I'd like to know that, right? So please place your sticker on the site that makes the most sense. Yes, sir. Thank you for using the mic.
This may be an unnecessary question, but can we assume that all of these sites will not create any environmental issues if they're built?
Yes, that's a fair question. Thank you. Yeah, so as we look at site selection, we try to evaluate, are there potential environmental impacts from a development like this? And we think that all 4 of these will accommodate this type of facility. I mean, there's a lot of consideration that will have to go in the future design phase, right, to make sure that we're discharging any runoff in a responsible way. But yes, I think all 4 sites are suitable. Thank you for the question. All right, so let me go back to process here and kind of outline our next steps. So once we get through tonight, we want to get that feedback. We'll talk about it as a team, talk about it with village staff, and our charge would be to start figuring out what the cost impacts of these facilities will be, both in terms of construction and for long-term operation and maintenance. So our final product to the village will be a report basically outlining this process and our findings and our recommendations for moving forward. So again, there's nothing concrete in terms of physical concrete coming out of this study. That would be a next step in the process. So we'll see how this discussion goes and go from there. So any other questions before we turn you loose back here and have some fun? It's going to be fun, right? That's why you're here? Super. Well, thank you guys very much for coming, and thank you to everyone in YouTube world who cannot be here, but we'll have a way for you to give us your feedback tomorrow, I assume. Thank you.